You ever look at a massive app like Netflix or Amazon and just wonder, how does that even work? Well, it's not just a mountain of code, you know? There's a plan, a blueprint. Every single great piece of software has an architecture that dictates exactly how it's built, how it runs, and maybe most importantly, how it's going to grow.
And that really is the million-dollar question for any developer or company, isn't it? It's the thin line between a global success and a total flop. So, what's the secret? What is it that lets some systems handle unbelievable amounts of traffic while others just, well, they just crumble under the pressure?
The answer, as you might have guessed, is all in that blueprint. It's the architectural choices they made, often way before a single line of code was ever written, that determined their fate. It's the foundation, right? And if your foundation is shaky, the whole skyscraper is coming down.
Okay, so let's get a clear definition. What is software architecture? Really, just think of it as the master plan. It spells out all the major pieces of the system, how they're all going to talk to each other, and the basic rules of the road for how the whole thing will operate and change over time. To really get this, let's follow the journey of a typical application right from the very beginning.
So, our story starts where most projects do, with the monolith. This is the classic, the go-to, and honestly, the smartest and fastest way to get your first product, your MVP, out into the world. I mean, look at it. It's so beautifully simple. You've got your user interface, the core business rules, the part that talks to the database. It's all wrapped up together in one single code base. You build it as one unit, you deploy it as one unit. Easy.
But here's the catch, the fundamental trade-off. The big advantage is speed right at the start. It's simple to develop, a breeze to deploy. But as it gets bigger, those disadvantages, they start to hurt a lot. Need to scale just one little part of the app? Sorry, you got to scale the whole thing. Want to make one tiny change? Yep, get ready to redeploy the entire beast.
So let's be clear, the monolith is perfect for getting off the ground. It's absolutely the right call for an MVP, for a small, tight-knit dev team, or for any project where you're not expecting to hit 1 million users overnight.
And here it is, the inevitable growing pain. Your amazing MVP is a success, but now it's a monster. Deployments are slow, they're scary. A tiny bug and some forgotten feature could bring the entire system crashing down. It's time to evolve.
Okay, so the next chapter in our system's life is all about bringing in some discipline. The layered architecture is how we start to bring order to the chaos by drawing some really clear lines in the sand. The whole idea here is to create strict boundaries. The presentation layer, what the user actually sees, is totally separate from the business logic layer, which holds all the important rules. And that layer is separate from the data access layer, which is the only part that gets to touch the database. And the rule is you have to go through the layers. No skipping allowed.
And the payoff for all this organization? It's huge. The system is way more maintainable, way easier to test because every part has one clear job. But the downside? You can end up with what's called layer cake architecture. What seems like a simple change ends up forcing you to make little tweaks in every single layer, which can feel incredibly slow and rigid.
This pattern is the absolute workhorse of big enterprise software. I'm talking banking systems, insurance platforms. These are complex apps that have to be maintained for years, even decades. And that's where this super structured, maintainable approach really shines. So now we've got a new problem, and it's a great problem to have. Your app is a smash hit. You've got tons of teams working on it, traffic is going through the roof. But that clean, layered monolith, it's now the bottleneck. How in the world do you scale to that next level? Welcome to the big leagues, hyperscale. This is where we stop thinking about one single application and start thinking about a whole collection of smaller systems that all work together. We're going to look at two huge patterns for this: microservices and event-driven systems. So instead of one giant codebase, we break it apart into lots of tiny independent services. You have a user service that only knows about users, an order service that only deals with orders. The beauty is, each one can be built, deployed, and scaled all by itself, by its own little team. The power you get here is just immense. You get unbelievable scalability. If the search service goes down, who cares? The checkout process still works. But all that power comes at a very steep price: operational complexity. You're not managing one app anymore. You're conducting an orchestra with hundreds of different instruments. And trying to debug a problem, it's like trying to find one wrong note in the middle of a symphony. It's tough.
Another really powerful pattern here is being event-driven. Instead of services calling each other directly, picture it like a town crier system. One service, the producer, just shouts out, "Hey, an order was just placed." Then, any other service that cares, the consumers, can listen for that announcement and react. The producer has no idea who's listening, and it doesn't care. This creates this incredibly flexible, scalable system that's perfect for real-time stuff. So why go through all this pain and complexity? Well, because for companies like Netflix or Uber, there's literally no other way. When you have to support that kind of scale, when you have hundreds of developers working at the same time, and when you absolutely need your system to be resilient, distributed systems are the only answer. All right, we've gone on the whole journey, from the simple monolith all the way up to these complex distributed systems. Now for the most important question of all. How do you choose the right blueprint for your project? Well, here's a pretty simple way to think about it. First, just look at your system and your team. Small team, new app, go with a monolith. Dozens of teams building a huge platform, you're probably going to need microservices. Then, think about your scaling needs and how often you need to push out new code. The answers to these questions will almost always point you in the right direction. And this is the most crucial point, so listen up. There is no such thing as the best architecture. A microservices architecture for a 3-person startup would be an absolute disaster. And a monolith for Amazon? Impossible. The right choice is always, always about balancing the trade-offs for your specific situation. This quote just nails it perfectly. Great system design is not about chasing whatever's cool and new. It's about deeply understanding what the business is trying to achieve and then making smart, practical tech decisions to get there. So, how do you start to think like a real architect? You learn to think in constraints. You can clearly explain the why behind your trade-offs. And most importantly, you always pick a pattern that matches the maturity of your team and your product, not just what's popular on social media. Which, of course, leaves us with one final question. Now that you know about these blueprints and these trade-offs, how are you going to approach your next project? What architectural choices will you make to give it the absolute best chance to succeed?